Well, good morning everybody. Thanks for joining me. I am on another health walk through the woods in New Hampshire. And this is kind of a familiar path to some of you guys by now, but I do plan on going maybe to some other trails, but I'm not sure what the internet signal will be. I know I can at least stream this crappy 3G from here. Not the best quality, but it does get clearer as we go, usually. So if it looks a little pixelated, it'll get better. The thing about this walk is, the first thing we like to do is get our little moment of clarity. I'll go down here by the river. You can listen to the water for a minute, check it out, see what it looks like this morning, and let's see what it does. I like to give you a little moment of zen before we start. Hi, Rusty. Hey, thanks for joining me. Rusty, would you mind posting this over in the chat room, let people know it's on? Because when I'm on the phone, I can't do anything like that. So, before we dive really into it, because fibromyalgia is a topic that cheeses a lot of people off. I hate to say it, not a popular topic usually, because I usually get yelled at for talking about this. Hi Jess, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you hanging out in the chat there. Yeah, so I usually like to give it a minute or two for everybody to get in live. For you guys that are seeing this later, this is a live walk, so I'm using my cruddy phone to do this. And what's happening is, hey Trudy, thanks for coming in. As people are coming in live, talking to me and asking questions. The only problem is, since this is a phone, I only get like a split second to answer everything before your question disappears. So if you have a question I'm not answering, just keep repeating it and eventually I'll see it, I hope. It's just because it's not like a computer where I can go back and see what everybody's talking about. And I'm actually trying to walk and not get eaten by bears and stuff, so I'm paying a little bit of attention. What's going on here? All right, so I'm letting one or two more people jump in here, and then we will get down to the fibro stuff. Now, some background with fibromyalgia is oh hey, thanks. Hi Life Blender, thanks for coming in. All right, like I said, I'm gonna say some stuff that's not popular and it kind of irritates people, but I'd rather not sugarcoat it so you can actually do something about this. Around the early 80s, 1980s, people started coming into doctors more and more complaining that they had diffuse pain over their body, chronic and terrible pain. Oh, wait a sec, before we get into this, check it out. There's the vortex tree. Everybody's favorite tree there. Woo, that's a cool tree. Hey Doc, if you got time later, I'd like to bounce an idea off you. Sure, Rusty. After the health talk, I can drop into the chat for a bit, the afterglow, and talk to you. Okay, so about the early 80s, patients starts arriving, and they start complaining to their doctors, I've got this diffuse pain, and everybody thinks I'm making this stuff up. Because the doctors would, you know, you're talking about the 80s, so their stuff was more limited, you know. They'd shoot an x-ray, there was no bone damage, you know, there was not much imaging. I mean, they had MRIs and stuff, but they'd maybe image the muscle tissue and see that maybe there's some scar tissue in it, something like that. But it was a diagnosis that was basically drove doctors nuts, because they were getting waves of patients that would come in and complain about this. And a lot of other complaints that go with that are dizziness, irregular heartbeat, fatigue. They're always tired too. I mean, massively tired, like can't get up out of bed. So they would come in and with these problems. And there's a lot more fibromyalgia symptoms, but the big one was always the chronic pain. And these physicians didn't know what to do with them because they couldn't prove the pain, and they would be like, well, this is all in your head, you know, you're not really sick. Or they would actually send them over to psychiatrists because they were saying that, you know, these people weren't really sick, they were just making it up. Terrible thing to do. Really, like, as a doctor, they didn't know what else to do. And I'm not going to bust on them too much because they didn't really know much about it in the 80s. But what happened was it became such a problem that so many people were coming in, they made up a diagnosis. A bunch of doctors got together and said, let's call this fibromyalgia, which is Latin for fibro means muscle, myalgia means pain. So basically it's just a fancy Latin name for muscle pain. That's it. So like they lumped anyone having muscle pain together as a fibromyalgia patient. And it got to be known as what's called the garbage pail diagnosis. In other words, your patient comes in with pain, you have no idea why they actually are in pain, so you just use this blanket fibromyalgia to cover your butt and give them a diagnosis, and they are happy because some doctor has acknowledged their pain, that it's real. Hey, I'm not just imagining it, I have fibromyalgia. And then they put you on some sort of drugs to deal with that. So there ended up being a large fibromyalgia market to these people who were in pain. They wouldn't get better, they would just manage it with some drugs. And finally the doctors had something to call it, even though they didn't have a clue why it was happening. And then they used the garbage pail diagnosis fibromyalgia for damn near anything that came in the door. So in my practice, you can have fibromyalgia for lots of different reasons. And it is, I think, a tragedy to just lump it all together as one thing, because every patient's different. And it's important to acknowledge those differences from patient to patient. You might have fibromyalgia for one reason. You might have chronically bad posture that'll cause that sort of diffuse pain. Someone else might have terrible gut lining problems that causes this muscle pain. Someone else might be infected with bacteria or a parasite that causes the same distribution of pain. Everybody's kind of individual. So what happens is the fibro community, they started, you know, anytime there's some sort of disease, a community will pop up around it, a support community, usually sponsored by the drug companies that are management companies, you know. Oh, spider web, hold on. Going through some stuff here. So the drug companies will start these management groups, and they will go to these fibromyalgia support groups, and they will tell you it is incurable. The best you can hope for in your life is to just manage it so you can get through your life. And there you go. Gypsy says as a fibro patient, it's a cop-out diagnosis. Yeah, we call it the garbage pail diagnosis between us doctors. It is the cop-out where they label it like going to a tea party, you know, on everybody. And patients, a big part of this was, you got to understand that patients were coming in and they were being told they were crazy, that it was in their head. So once they made a Latin name for it, muscle pain, they now could say you have muscle pain in Latin, slap a diagnosis on it, sell you some drugs, and everybody's happy because now, you know, you have a wife that'll go back to their husband and say, see, I wasn't imagining it. My doctor said I have fibromyalgia. You guys are jerks. You know, like, and I do feel, I'm not trying to make light of it because I do feel for these women. They are in lots of pain. It's for real. It is a real, the pain is very real. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the diagnosis crap is what I'm saying. So the way this, oh, big spider web. Let's see, how do I get around this? Woo. Let's just go through. One of the big problems is that the diagnosis for it, this is used to be what it was. You'd base it basically on the patient history that they had diffuse pain. Then you would do a search on the patient's body, and out of 18 kind of points where they would put on the body, if, whoa, hi chipmunk, look at chipmunk. No, he ran away. If you had 11 of the 18 points, you were diagnosed with fibromyalgia. It was really that basic in the beginning. It was, you know, do you have a couple of these symptoms like depression, pain, fatigue, maybe dizziness or rapid heartbeat, something like that, and pain in these spots. And that was it. And the exam was literally like 30 seconds long. A doctor would just tap you on the back in these places, and if you said, ow, you got diagnosed. For the rest of your life, as a fibromyalgia patient, where they tell you there is no cure and you have to live with it, that you just have to learn to manage it with these convenient pharmaceuticals that we sell. So the real deal with fibromyalgia is that it is very individual per patient. But these pain things, these points will present on lots of different reasons. And you really need a true workup. Okay, now remember, I am doing a nature walk, so if I see something cool, I stop and look at it. And for you guys, some of you are watching, be like, man, just talk about the fibro, he's so ADD. No, man, it's a nature walk. I'm gonna stop and look at cool stuff. So take a look at this mushroom, pretty cool. I'm not sure what kind it is, if any of you guys know. But I do love the mushrooms. So, back to the story. We get into the 90s and 2000s, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, men get it too. I'm sorry if I'm saying women. Men do get it, but much less. It is mainly a woman thing on a diagnosis, like proportionately high. And a lot of that is because women have a lot more autoimmune issues than men. And partially, almost every fibro patient I've ever seen has a hidden autoimmune issue. Now, what this will be caused by, first and foremost in my practice, is diet. Usually you're eating an inflammatory diet, and it will crank you up. And when you're inflamed, the muscle tissues also get chronic inflammation, and the joints get chronic inflammation. So you'll be eating an inflammatory diet, and usually you're eating something you're either allergic to or food sensitive to. And when you figure out what that is and eliminate it, the swelling starts to go out of those areas that hurt. So the way to deal with that is first to probably do a food diary. Go down to eating nothing but fruits and vegetables. If you feel like you could fast, talk to your doctor and then go to your fast. Life Bender says, my first doctor was a legit drug dealer, and she capitalized legit. I guess, yeah, there are some docs that get in trouble for that stuff. So, what happens is, first thing is, it's almost the same thing as the leaky gut, right? Where you want to find out what is inflaming your body systemically. And you do that by using a food diary. Or you can run out, they do have a Cyrex test. You can get one of these Cyrex arrays, I think it's about $500 or $600, that will actually tell you what you're food sensitive to. I don't trust any company besides Cyrex. I've had the other ones and they're not accurate. Cyrex is definitely accurate, I like them. I've heard that from doctors about my chronic pain, there's no cure. That you'll be in pain It was years ago. Now, the problem is this. Not that your local MD, family doctor's a bad guy or something. It's just they're overwhelmed in their practice. They only get 10 to 20 minutes with you. Is really not enough time to coach a patient on how to eat right, how to eliminate stuff. It's unfortunately the model and the system they're slaves to, that they're there to do the best they can. I mean, they're trying to help you, but it's just not their forte. They don't have time to spend, they don't have time to spend with each patient hours of consultation to figure this stuff out. So, what eventually happens is that you're trying to you're trying to find what in your diet is causing this sort of systemic inflammation. And the way I do that is, if you can handle a fast about 3 days, then come off it and add one thing at a time. So the first day you're back, you add dairy. See if you can eat cheese. See if you can drink some milk. If you have a reaction within 3 days, that's probably it. After that, if you don't have a reaction to dairy, go 3 days, do gluten, eat some bread. If you react to bread, stop eating bread. Stop eating wheat. Go another 3 days, then add nightshades. Nightshades are a big one too. Potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants. Some people are really allergic to that, especially if they have lupus. Nightshades. Those are the big three. Dairy, gluten, and nightshades can be the big ones for what I've seen in my practice. Most people it's dairy. And they'll be like, well, I'm good, all I eat's yogurt. Or I'm good, all I eat's cheese. I don't really have much. Oh no, the connection's breaking up. Are you guys getting a better connection, Trudy? I can stop for a sec. Is this a better connection now? Give me some feedback. Yeah, all right. Sorry about that. I am on crappy 3G. Maybe it's better now. So, you want to, you guys give me some feedback if the connection's better, if it's not done breaking up. With, this is, you got to go to your diet first, and a lot of people be like, oh, I cleaned up my diet and I feel terrible and crappy. Well, you probably have severe leaky gut if every food is making you sick. And you'll have to do some sort of leaky gut protocol to get that cleared up. Leaky gut seems to be the problem with almost all these chronic diseases we talk about. And an autoinflammation, you want to turn down the inflammation in your body and then be a diet Nazi about what goes in. That's a big problem. Those two things are usually the root cause of fibro. But there can be some weird stuff too. I have seen people get fibromyalgia from mold in the house. Like, we clean their diet up and they're still sick. Or some sort of other biotoxin. They got bit by a spider a long time ago, or a tick-borne disease. Something like that will give you fibro. Anything that kind of swells and inflames you. So after that, you're going to look at parasites, gut cultures, and a lot of times if you go to a good functional medicine doctor, they'll do a blood panel. They'll find out how inflamed you are. They'll restrict your diet, figure it out, and most likely they'll do some sort of stool analysis to see what kind of bugs are in you. So find out if you're overloaded with a certain kind of bacteria or parasite. Then liver congestion is a big one. So after you get those two things figured out, you turn down the inflammation and you figured out the parasite or bad guy in your gut, the yeast or whatever the problem's causing it, you go to gut congestion and you start working on cleaning up your gut, and especially your liver. Your liver job is to remove toxic chemicals and hormones that they need to be broken down out of you. So if you are depressed with your fibromyalgia and you're on some sort of, I don't know, probably serotonin or some sort of benzo antidepressant, it's probably because your gut is messed up. Because what happens is when your gut gets out of balance, it really affects your serotonin production. And your serotonin production is responsible for a good part of your happiness. So if you're just like, man, I feel like crud. The good news is if you can address these, most of the time just cleaning up your diet will be like 80% of the battle. Getting off whatever's making you sick, which is usually dairy or gluten. And it has to be completely off. You can't be like, oh, well, I'm still eating butter, or I'm still eating cheese. You'll pay for that. If you do, your fibro will come back with a vengeance. If you don't believe me, do a food diary, keep eating what you're eating, and track when you hurt. So be like, oh, this is weird. Every time I eat pizza, 12 hours later, my back is killing me, or my joints are killing me. You know, you could figure it out by actually tracking what you have. So fibro, it really pisses me off in this culture that patients are told it's a life sentence. There's no cure. You know, you just have to live with it. Come to your fibro support group where we're going to talk about the latest drugs. You know, yeah, if you're being treated by a gastro doctor, some of you, that should tell you a lot right there. If you got problems enough to be at a gastro doctor, you got gut issues. And it depends on your flavor. I mean, obviously I'm not going to tell you to stop going to your doctor, but you might want to get a second opinion by a functional so busy that you can't even take patients. Because you start really getting to the root of the real problem, and you got to spend more than 10 minutes trying to diagnose something and throw a drug at it. You know, the real problem is usually your diet. You're eating something, especially when it's you and a spouse has it. Like, oh, me and my husband both have these problems. Well, you both eat the same lifestyle probably. So you're going to have a real come to Jesus meeting about what you're eating. And it's most likely your favorite food, because it's a food you put in your body all the time. Because if it was like a food you didn't like, you'd never eat it. You never have the sensitivity to it. So it's going to be probably your favorite food you're allergic to, which is usually dairy. And again, you have to be careful. There are times where it gets so bad you actually create an allergic reaction. But most of the time you have to call them food sensitivities, depending on the test. So if you're going to a gastro guy, you might want a second opinion and find a good functional med guy around you. They're pretty good at cleaning up the real issues with guts. I've had family members who have had horrible Crohn's disease and was going to the best Mayo guy. And I sat down with him and I was like, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing this? And why aren't we removing this food? He's like, well, nobody ever told me about that. And I'm like, you just spent $10,000 going to the Mayo Clinic and no one sat down and talked to you about the basics? You know, why aren't we using glutamate powder? Why aren't we doing this? You know, why aren't we? It's just crazy. So they're just different paradigms. Just because you've been to the best guy doesn't mean you've gotten the full story. You really deserve it to yourself to go get a second opinion somewhere. That being said, that's the deal with fibro. Don't shoot the messenger that it's pretty much a made-up garbage pail diagnosis, and you don't have to accept the fact that you have to live with it for the rest of your life, or you're going to, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. That's a BS thing to tell patients, and it really irritates me. And there's a whole culture